Welcome to Fourth and Frames. I'm your host, Chris Battistone. With me today is my co-host, Drew Scott. We are without the Louisiana legend himself, Rhett Manuel. He's probably getting honored in some ring of Hall of Fame somewhere down in Louisiana. But fret not, we got the boss man, Jorge Edwards, with us tonight. We will be delivering our top QBs and running backs in these way too early rankings for 2024. Let's get it popping. Oh, that's usually Rhett's job.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
This is how badly we need Rhett back.
I'm not lying. I was literally, as you were about to say, let's get it popping, I was like, oh shit, the video. Rhett does that. And I was scrambling to try to find it, but then I was like, I don't know if Chris is gonna do it, and I don't want to hit it, and then Chris try to hit it and mess it up. So yeah, Rhett, we miss you, man, if you can't tell.
We need you, Rhett. We need you back, but we hope everything is good with you, brother. Jorge, welcome back to the show. We had you on a couple weeks where we broke down a bit of our rankings and talked about some of the discrepancies in those. This time, though, around, we're going to be giving our way too early redraft quarterback and running back rankings. Before we do that, how have you been, man? How has June treated you so far? And are you looking forward to July and training camps?
Man, I first of all, thank you very much for having me back. It's always a pleasure talking shop with y'all. Rhett, we miss you. Can't wait to have you back. I'm doing well, man. I am scrounging for anything news related from the NFL. Like, I get a high from somebody saying somebody's signing their rookie tender or rookie contract or whatever. I'm like, all right, yay, we got NFL news. I love it. Trevor Lawrence gets his deal. The T. Higgins signs his tender. Yes, this is amazing. I love all the news because we're in the doldrums of summer, right? We'll take whatever we can get football-wise.
Yes, sir.
Fantasy-wise, there's all sorts of stuff. I feel like fantasy literally is a year-round thing. But just real football-wise, man, I'm feeding.
Yeah, you and me both, brother. The USFL was nice, but it just didn't hit the mark for us. You know what I mean? And congratulations to the Birmingham champions over there. I think that's 3 straight for them now, right?
Screw those guys, man.
The USFL, yeah.
It's the battle. It's the Battlehawks versus everybody, man. Screw those guys.
Now defend DC. Come on, let's defend DC. Let's do that better.
What they get, like last place, second to last place?
Hey, they were in the championship game of the XFL last year. All right, let's cut them some slack.
We will not be cutting any slack to any of these teams in the USFL. Drew, we noticed that we got Hotel Drew tonight. Hopefully your internet holds up, brother. You're looking good, looking sharp. Whereabouts are you in the world right now? Where in the world is Drew San Diego?
I'm in upstate New York right now. Kind of wishing I was on the West Coast though, with how that Kendrick Lamar pop-up concert's looking right now. I'm kind of wishing I was out there, but I'm in upstate New York today. So yeah, fingers crossed. I had to, it's always a roulette wheel of good internet or bad internet, whatever you're in a hotel. And tonight it appears it's bad internet, so I'm relying on the phone hotspot. So fingers crossed that it pulls through for me tonight.
Yeah, you're looking good. Don't forget to check out the episode we did last week with Howard Bender, where we talked about our early wide receiver and tight end rankings. This episode, we got QBs and running backs with Jorge Edwards from right here at Fantasy and Frames, one of the hardest working people in the community, in the industry. He just did 365 before this. He's on Fourth and Frames now. Are you doing Shoot the Gap after, Jorge?
Yeah, JT and I are pulling double duty together. So we'll have Shoot the Gap or IDP pod after Fourth and Frames.
Terrific, man. Albert, thanks for tuning in. To everybody watching, we appreciate you. Head over to the Fantasy and Frames YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel, like the stream, head over to the X page for Fantasy and Frames, and follow us head over to fantasyandframes.com, and you will find these rankings in full from myself, Jorge, Drew, and Rhett on the webpage there. So make sure you go and find those. Gentlemen, let's hop into the quarterback rankings. We got our top 16 redraft quarterbacks. All got Josh Allen across the top. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
We pulled the right information this time. So
How
far,
much
at
is it?
least.
So far, so good.
Yeah. So we're assuming 4-point passing TD in this one. As much as we enjoy 6-point passing TD, and we think that's the way that it's eventually going to end up being, or some kind of version of an increased passing touchdown output for the quarterbacks, we're going to assume 4-point passing TD. So of course the rushing quarterbacks are going to sit at the top. As you can see, we all have Josh Allen across the top. Our second quarterbacks mix up a little bit between myself, Jorge, and Drew. We both got Lamar Jackson. Drew's got Jalen Hurts at 2. Jorge's got Jalen Hurts at 3, and I got Jalen Hurts at 4. Drew, what is your expectation for Jalen Hurts this year? Are you expecting the same kind of rushing output?
Yeah, just a little bit more of the same, honestly. Jalen Hurts is a guy that going back to college, every single year he has just continued to improve as a player. I have no reason to believe that he won't continue to do so. I know the offense was kind of spotty at times last year, but I think Saquon will add an element to this offense and will help out Jalen Hurts a little bit. There is room for him possibly to be hurt some as well. There's, I don't think that Jason Kelce retiring is just going to eliminate the tush push, but I do think that there's a reality where he might lose some rushing touchdowns just because they can turn around and hand off the ball to Saquon instead. You don't bring in Saquon and pay him all that money to not hand him the ball, right? So I do think that there's a world where he loses a couple of rushing touchdowns. But I mean, to be honest with you, my 1, 2, and 3, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, they're all in a tier together to where and I'm not an early quarterback guy for the most part, especially not like the tier 1 quarterbacks. I very rarely, if ever, in a 1 quarterback league, I'm going to be one of the guys drafting one of these tier 1 quarterbacks that are going in like the, 2nd to 3rd round. So even though I have these guys where they are, I'm probably not going to draft any of them. But I think that Hurts just has a really safe floor because even if he does lose a couple of touchdowns, I think the rushing upside is still there, and the touchdowns aren't going to just go away. Like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's no reason for them to just go away from that. But I think it's just going to be a little bit more of the same. And I love the weapons around him. I love Hurts. I love his work ethic. I love that what he does as a quarterback. And so he feels like a really easy, safe option there at the top of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, for me, I brought him down a little bit in the 4-point passing TD because, like you, I kind of agree that Saquon Barkley is going to eat into some of that rushing touchdown totals, especially when they get within the goal line. And that's where I kind of have my little bit of hesitation with Jalen Hurts because he's never really hit that 30 passing touchdown threshold for me. So if he does get hit by Saquon Barkley vulturing some of those touchdowns, how much confidence do I have him to make that up as a passer, right? 15 interceptions last year. He was averaging, I believe in the last 6 games, 1 interception per game. And that's negative points. I mean, unless you're playing in Scott Fishbowl, you don't mind it. But
right.
The 15 picks, the 24 touchdowns, the season before that, he only had the 6 picks, but the 25 touchdowns. But a lot of his success comes from those rushing touchdowns, that rushing work. So that's where the hesitation comes from me for Jalen Hurts. Jorge, I mean, ranking him 4 is like he's no slouch. I still have him as a top 5 quarterback, but you have Lamar Jackson ahead of Jalen Hurts, Jorge. Yeah. Is it the fact that Lamar Jackson is perceived to be a better passer but ranks as the same tier of a rusher for Jalen Hurts? Is that why you have Lamar Jackson ahead of him?
No, so there was something that Drew, you mentioned a few seconds ago. You really like the weapons for Philadelphia in the receiving game. I like the weapons for Philadelphia in the receiving game too. In fact, I know for a fact that Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert have been, in the top 25 in fantasy scoring in some way or the other for years. Okay. I know Saquon Barkley is utilized as out of the backfield in the receiving game. Okay. I see that, and I'm like, there's less need for Jalen Hurts to get those rushing yards, to get those rushing plays, because he has so many weapons he can dump the ball off to that they can make plays themselves. Versus Lamar Jackson, we're looking at a hot streak down the end of the season with Zay Flowers. We're looking at Mark Andrews, who can't stay healthy for a full season. And we're looking at Derrick Henry, who's primarily a one-dimensional running back, all of which tells me, damn it, well, I guess I got to keep doing everything myself on the ground. And that's why he's going to get the extra rushing yards, I feel, this year. And that's the only reason why I feel that Lamar should go ahead of Jalen Hurts, is because I think there's more of a path to rushing upside with Lamar than Jalen.
I don't know if having the best running back Lamar's ever played with is a case for Lamar to have more rushing yards, but I get what you're going from. I get what you're going for, though.
Yeah, it's not. So I mean, you could say that it's the best one he's had. Sure, it's the best one he's had, but he's still one dimensional. It's not like he's this. It's not like he's Saquon Barkley. You know what I mean? Who can do it in the faces of the field. So I feel like, and not to mention, what happens down the stretch of the season? Does Derrick Henry hasn't been the model of health also in the past 2 years? Can he make it a whole season? Do they kind of put him on ice as Keaton Mitchell comes back from his ACL injury? Like, what happens in that backfield as we get going? We don't know. One thing we do know confidently is Lamar is always going to Lamar and get you those rushing yards more often than not. I just feel like there's more of a clear path, like I said, to him getting those yards than there is Jalen Hurts, just because of the offensive weapons he has around him.
Yeah, it's a fair argument. I mean, we're really, we're
2 and 3. We're pulling strings.
Yeah,
we're
picking at very, very minimal differences here. It's just that, for the injury argument, I don't ever go into a season projecting injuries or expecting injuries. Like I'm assuming that Mark Andrews is going to play a full season. We talk about Saquon Barkley possibly losing some, or Jalen Hurts possibly losing some rushing touchdowns to Saquon. Is there a bigger threat to score in the red zone than Derrick Henry? Like at the running back position, like is there anybody better at getting it in the end zone once you get down there at that point? So I think that they both have. It's concerns for their fantasy perspective, but it's a good thing for the team perspective that they upgrade that they've made at the running back position. I think that they both have. There's some red flags for both of them, which is why I have them as close as I do. I have them both in tier 1. If you wanted to take Lamar at quarterback 1, I wouldn't fight you, because he has that level of upside. And if Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews play a full healthy season, I have extreme confidence in Lamar Jackson as a passer, to where I think that he can do enough to elevate that offense as a passer, along with what he brings as a rusher. And it's with Lamar, he makes it look so effortless running the ball. Like it's just like he looks like he's not even hardly moving, but yet nobody can catch him. It's the most wild thing that I've ever seen. But yeah, so like, these guys we're really just we're nitpicking a little bit, but yeah, they're all Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. They're my tier 1 quarterbacks for this year. If you wanted to take any of those guys as the quarterback 1 in your draft, you're really not going to hear an argument from me.
There it is. Jorge, the only one that doesn't have Caleb Williams in his top 16 of quarterbacks, you have Jaden Daniels as the only rookie quarterback listed in your top 16. Is it just a little bit of hesitation with the rookie QB coming in, new system?
I like what they did, trying to make some improvements along their offensive line. I like the signing. I really like the signing of DeAndre Swift, taking that pressure off of Caleb Williams having to make all the throws, even though he has all the receiving options here. I look at this Bears offense, and my immediate thought is this is going to be more beneficial for the skill players than it is Caleb Williams for fantasy, just because I don't see Caleb Williams having that rushing upside that a lot of these other quarterbacks do. And not to mention, it's a tough division that he's going into. I do have Jared ahead of him in the ranks, and some might be asking, why is Jared Goff going against Caleb Williams? Because I've seen Jared Goff perform the past few seasons with the weapons that he has, and they're only getting better. And he's been in the league, and he's been getting those reps in with the players that he has around him, versus Caleb Williams. Like we said, entering the draft and immediately after the NFL draft, like tell me a rookie quarterback who's entered the NFL in such a great position in terms of skill players around him. That's being surrounded by these players is one thing. Being mature from the sense of confident and capable is a different thing. We don't know how he's going to react to that situation, and he's facing some tough defenses in that division. This year, so I'm a little hesitant there.
For me, the rushing yardage might not necessarily be for Caleb Williams. I think he was, other than his last year, I think he was typically around like the 300 to 400 yard mark. But the thing that is really intriguing for me with Caleb Williams is he showed a nose for the end zone in terms of being able to. I think he had double-digit rushing touchdowns his last 2 years in college, and touchdowns are tough to project. But whenever you look at the backfield, DeAndre Swift isn't necessarily the best goal line back. Roshan Johnson, I know he's got the size, but I'm not a Roshan guy. I'm not a Roshan believer. I don't think that he's it. So like I think there's a world where Caleb Williams might be one of their best options in terms of running the ball in the red zone, and he showed that he can get it done in college. So I think that that's really intriguing. And whenever you combine that with the fact that he's surrounded by this just incredible list of weapons that he could get some passing touchdowns from as well, I'm in with the Caleb Williams hype. Like, I'm a believer. I think that he was the number one overall. I think he was the clear number one overall pick. Whenever you look at Caleb Williams, he had a 92nd percentile passing EPA as a sophomore, and despite the notion that he can't play in structure, he only scrambled less than 7% of the time, which was comparable to Sam Darnold in college, and that was lower than Joe Burrow in college. Like, there's a lot of highlight reel plays out there of him getting out of the pocket, making these crazy plays, because at times that's just what he had to do. And I don't think it's because he can't play in structure. I just think his last year in college, the structure of the USC offense wasn't that good. And so it's just, the highlights, I think the highlights of him getting out of the pocket have made him an underrated pocket passer. And then, in the situation that he's walking into in Chicago with Keenan Allen, with DJ Moore, with Romo Dunze, with Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, DeAndre Swift, while he might not be a great goal line back, he's a great pass catching back. So it's like there's a lot of weapons there at Caleb Williams' disposal. He's shown that he can get it done as a rusher in the red zone in college. And so I think that that's enough. That's enough for me to want to put him into the back end of my top 16 in the quarterbacks. And I think he's a good, a late upside shot. If you do go late round quarterback, I think you can do a lot worse than Caleb Williams.
Yep. I mean, I'm looking forward to Caleb Williams in the Chicago Bears offense, like Drew highlighted there. The weapons that he has at his disposal for a rookie quarterback is exactly what you want out of your fantasy managers. My only worry is the pace of play and what it's going to be for Chicago, because the defense is just so well put together.
Yeah,
are they gonna put him in positions where they're gonna slow the game down a bit in order to help develop the rookie quarterback and not try to get him to force situations or force plays down the field? So that's my little bit of a hesitation for Caleb Williams, but I'm looking forward to him. I mean, Jorge, you got him at what, 17 or 18? You said.
So my rankings, I have him at 18. Jared Goff, I have 17. So I mean, it's. We're right there with that.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and it's fair because Jared Goff last year passed for 4,500 yards.
And Jared Goff gets to start the year. I forget exactly what it is, but it's like almost every damn game he plays in to start the year is in a dome or in a favorable weather situation. Like, that's the only time you don't want to play Jared Goff is if he's on the road with poor weather. Like, he's shown that he is very much so a dome quarterback or a warm weather quarterback. You don't want to play the guy in bad situations. And like basically until the end of the season, you don't have to worry about that. So you could very well end up, you could draft Goff at the end of your drafts, and you could very well ride him out through the majority of the season. And you might need to pivot come fantasy playoff times, which is unfortunate. But Goff could be a very serviceable quarterback the entire year for you. And I mean, he can be one of your last picks.
Yep. Second in pass attempts last year was Jared Goff with 605, only behind Sam Howell, who had 612. Goff only has three outdoor games this season.
That's wild, man. That's crazy. So, and then, I mean, the weapons are just like the weapons are the same, but you would think they're going to get better, though. Like, Sam Laporta with another year under his belt, he could take a step forward. Jameer Gibbs is going to, I would think they're going to get him more involved, and he's an incredible pass catching running back. Jared Goff loves to dump it off to the running backs, and there's not many that are going to be a better option to dump off to than Jameer Gibbs. Jameson Williams, there's a lot of talk of him taking a step forward. We'll see what's to come of that. But, his situation, I don't see any world where his situation is worse than what it was last year, and his schedule is extremely favorable. So I think he's a good late round shot.
Yep, I like it. Drew, I gotta talk you off the ledge, man. You're just too high on Anthony Richardson, man. Putting him above Patrick Mahomes to me right now is just a little bit. I mean, it's only one position. Like, I'm not going to get too hard on you, but I mean, Patrick Mahomes probably has some of the best sets of weapons that he's had in quite some time, probably since they got rid of Tyreek Hill. And even then, I would question the depth as a whole over what they have now, over what they had then. Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Marquise Brown, Travis Kelce. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is probably excited. I find it tough to put Anthony Richardson ahead of a guy that, I'm projecting to see a high pass total coming out for Patrick Mahomes this year, especially stretching the field. I'm expecting a lot of big plays coming out of Kansas City Chiefs. So, I mean, the Anthony Richardson love, I get it, but man, you gotta let me know why you got him at 4, because I got him at 7. I mean, I like Anthony Richardson. Jorge's got him at 5, but he's got Mahomes above. Is there something with Mahomes that you just see that you don't see coming into the year?
No, it's not. It's no worry about Mahomes. My tier 2 of quarterbacks is Anthony Richardson, Mahomes, and Kyler. I've got them all in a tier together. So if you want to take Mahomes over Richardson, you're not going to get an argument out of me. But in a 4-point passing touchdown league, I would just prefer to take the shot on Richardson. And if this was 6-point, they would be flip flopped. So there is a little bit of difference there. And it's important to know your league settings.
Sure.
I would flip flop those guys if we were talking about 6-point passing touchdowns. But in 4-point passing touchdowns, I think there's a world with Mahomes that with how strong the Chiefs defense is, with how productive Isaiah Pacheco has been, it's like Mahomes can get it done anytime you need to. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. But with Mahomes not running a ton, he's going to need to hit the high 4,000s in passing and, 40 plus passing touchdowns. And if there's any quarterback in the league that's a good bet of doing that, it is Mahomes, which is why he's the only pocket passer I have in this tier. Like you'll notice, like I think you're too high on Dak Prescott. I think he has to, in a 4-point passing touchdown league. I don't think that there's any world where I'm taking Prescott over Anthony Richardson. But I get the argument because they really didn't do anything at the running back position. They're probably gonna have to throw a ton because it's not like they're gonna give Rico Dowdle and Zeke
making the argument for
a game. I get why you have him there.
Yeah.
I just think in a 4-point passing touchdown league, I think that's too high. And with Anthony Richardson, I know it was a small sample. I know you don't have to yell at me. You don't have to tell me that, but he was the quarterback 4 weeks 1 through 4. He was the quarterback 4, and he only finished 2 of those 4 games. And in points per game, he was still the quarterback 4. And the big concern with Richardson coming in was, this guy's not a passer. He can't, he can't get it done as a passer. And even though I was high on Anthony Richardson, I was even surprised how good of a passer he was. He had a 71.1% adjusted completion percentage and an 85.7 catchable throw percentage. And I don't think, with them bringing in AD Mitchell, I think that the weapons got an upgrade. I'm an AD Mitchell guy. I'm a fan of his. And having him on the outside next to Michael Pittman as opposed to Alec Pierce, I think that that's an upgrade. I've got to do it. I've got to say it. Having a healthy Jelani Woods on the field is an upgrade from the rest of the tight ends that they were rolling out on the field last year. Had Jelani Woods had to miss the entire season. Having a healthy Jelani Woods is an upgrade. Like the passing offense is upgraded now. We don't really know. We haven't really got to see a healthy Jonathan Taylor and a healthy Anthony Richardson. That's really the only question mark I have is what does introducing JT to the offense do to Anthony Richardson's upside? But we've seen rushing quarterbacks and talented running backs coexist. And so, I don't think he's going to average 1 rushing touchdown per game like he did through the 4-game sample to start the season. But, I mean, he showed very quickly that the athleticism, the rushing upside that we saw in college that he showed off at the Combine, it translated to the NFL level. And if Shane Steichen can make the Colts offense look as good as he did with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, it's just with them upgrading the weapons, another year in Shane Steichen's offense. I'm just really excited to see what he can do. And in a 4-point passing touchdown league, this is the exact type of quarterback that I want to target.
So there's the concern of Jonathan Taylor coming back, maybe taking some of the will
The
be
rushing
taking some
touchdowns.
of the rushing away.
Yeah.
See, the fact that Jonathan Taylor is coming back is and it's so funny you brought his name up. It kind of levels for me Dak and Anthony Richardson a little bit, just because both of these quarterbacks are going to have to be relying heavily on heavy passing yardage. With Dak having one instance, which because he has no running backs, and the second one, at least as of now, and Anthony Richardson does have Jonathan Taylor that they just paid all this money to, that they're going to have to get their money's worth and have to protect the quarterback who could only play in 4 games last year because of the taking on that dual threat as a runner as well as a passer. That doesn't concern you at all, or has that been baked into your evaluation there?
Yeah, no. If Jonathan Taylor wasn't healthy, he'd probably be my quarterback too. So it's definitely baked into there. But yeah, I think the athleticism is something we haven't seen from a quarterback. He literally tested as the most athletic quarterback in combine history, and then you combine that with what he showed as a passer last year. He was ahead of the curve, in my opinion, as a passer of what we expected coming in. And then they upgraded the weapons. I have all the faith in the world of Shane Steichen as a play caller. And so, the only thing keeping him from being in tier 1 for me is Jonathan Taylor being back in the fold and the possibility of him taking some rushing touchdowns away. But Anthony Richardson is too much of a weapon. You're not just the Colts aren't going to take Anthony Richardson running in the red zone out of their playbook. They would be doing the team a disservice if they did that. And so it is baked into where he's my quarterback 4 as opposed to my quarterback 2 or quarterback 3.
I like how Chris is bringing the attention to where we have Anthony Richardson in our rankings, but
and he's got it buried. Chris? Why do you hate Anthony Richardson?
He has it below.
I don't hate Anthony Richardson. It's just the sample size, the weapons, my expectations for Dak Prescott. Finished as QB5 in fantasy points per game last year between weeks 1 and 17. On the back of that passing total, he was the 5th QB in total pass attempts through that span, and I'm expecting him to be in the top 3 at the end of the season, just based on what we can pull from history on what Mike McCarthy does as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller, who they have or who they don't have in their backfield. CeeDee Lamb is going as the wide receiver 1 because of the way the offense is built and what everyone is projecting them to do in the passing game. So that's where, I love a rushing QB as much as everyone else. I love rushing QBs and 4-point passing, but I also love high volume passing quarterbacks that are going to put up the possibility of 42 to 4,500 yards, 36 passing touchdowns. Dak Prescott was QB 11 in rush attempts last year. He had 55 rush attempts, didn't show up in the yardage, didn't show up with the in the touchdown totals, probably because a lot of those were victory formation or whatnot. I don't know if they count those towards their rushing totals, but still, the opportunity for Dak to rush is built into that offense. He does have that part of the game. He's not Lamar. He's not Anthony Richardson. So for me, it's Anthony Richardson needs to have 800 rushing yards, double-digit rushing touchdowns, and a decent passing output for him, I feel, to finish in the top 5. Jalen Hurts had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. I don't think that's fair to project. Like we say, touchdowns are,
I think he'll still flirt
hard
with double digits, but
I think he'll flirt with double digits, but he's going to need it to finish as a top 3 quarterback. If he doesn't hit that double-digit rushing touchdown total, his value falls for me a little bit. So for me, that's where I have the value baked into Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray, because Kyler Murray can rush the ball. We know what Kyler Murray can do. Kyler Murray is also a great deep ball passer. He's also a great passer. So
what you mentioned with Dak with the rushing, that's where if I end up being wrong about Dak, I think that's where I'm going to be wrong, because post all the knee injuries and things like that, his rushing really took a decline. He had he had 3 straight years of being under 200 rushing yards. And last year he climbed above 50 rushing attempts and above 200 rushing yards for the first time since 2019. And so if that continues to upswing a little bit because the running backs are so lacking and he does get into the end zone a few times as a runner as well, then I could see me being too low on him. But I don't have the confidence to project that. And so I think that's where you and I probably differ. But if he ends up running the ball more than I expect, I could easily see myself being too low on Dak as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have him ranked as a QB1. You still have him in your top 10. You have him at QB9. Yeah. It's nothing, he's no slouch. You're
he's
still
in a tier,
projecting him to
I've
tier
got
3?
So my tier 3. It's Stroud, Burrow, and Dak. It's basically the elite pocket passers not named Pat Mahomes. It's basically what that tier is. So like I like all those guys. I would just prefer to take a shot on the guys that are a little bit more mobile if I'm going to draft a quarterback early. Like basically in one quarterback redraft leagues, my strategy right now is I'm targeting Anthony Richardson in round 5. If I miss out on A-Rich in round 5, I'm pivoting to Kyler in round 7. And then if I miss out on Kyler in round 7, I'm just going to fade the position and I'm going to go full late round quarterback and take a shot on a guy like Jaden Daniels or Herbert or Trevor Lawrence or possibly Jordan Love.
Yep. But just sorry. One more thing. If I'm projecting Patrick Mahomes to hit 4,500 passing yards, if there's one other quarterback that I would project in that range that would hit that mark, it'd be Dak Prescott.
For me, it's CJ Stroud. That would be my pick.
Yeah. Joe Burrow would be the other kind of guy that I would throw. CJ Stroud, 4,500 is a lot. I don't know if CJ Stroud can hit it.
I think with building on his rookie year and then adding Stephon Diggs, I think the sky's the limit for Stroud this year. But you do have to do a lot of projecting with passing yards and passing touchdowns with the lack of rushing upside. So I probably won't have any CJ Stroud this year because he's going higher than I'm comfortable taking him. But if I had to bet on a non-Patrick Mahomes guy to hit those numbers, Stroud would be the guy for me this year.
And you take the analytics out of the equation, you take away all the metrics here. Like Dak Prescott is going to have to play his ass off for this contract. Is he going to be in Dallas next year? Is he going to go somewhere else? And I'm with you, Chris. Chris. I really think we've seen impressive seasons from Dak Prescott in years past. I think this is going to be, it's him and CD. As high as one goes, the other one will follow neck and neck throughout the fantasy football season this year.
Agreed. Let's hit up the chat. We got a question from Albert. He wants to know our thoughts on Jordan Love. Jorge, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts and expectations for Jordan Love heading into 2024?
So I have him in my second tier quarterback 9. First of all, I love him. I love Jordan Love. I think we saw last year. I mean, this is not the thing to hang one's hat on, but like, did you see all the completions he had throwing off his back shoulder with just such poor form? Can you imagine when like the technique gets better, his comfort with the receivers gets better? We have the pressure of Josh Jacobs. We have the pressure he might be facing alleviated with Josh Jacobs and having a competent running scheme like they did not have last year. Just the balance that this whole offense has. I can't tell you right now who's going to finish as the Green Bay Packers wide receiver 1. I can tell you that Jordan Love will finish as a quarterback 1 this year just because he has so many weapons to throw to. It's very exciting for me. I'm very excited for Jordan Love this year.
Yeah, the concern for me with Jordan Love is the touchdown rate from last year just feels very unsustainable. Like with how often they were throwing it in the red zone, and the lack of rushing touchdowns in the red zone, it just feels like that it would be very easy to see with them bringing in Josh Jacobs, giving him a decent, even if it does end up just being a 1-year contract. I know it was a multiple-year deal, but if you look at the details of Josh Jacobs' contract, it could very well end up being a 1-year deal. But with them bringing in Josh Jacobs, with them using a day 2 pick on Marshawn Lloyd, it would be very easy for me to see the passing touchdowns for Love taking a step back and the rushing touchdowns for the Packers offense as a whole taking a step forward. And with Love not adding much as a rusher himself in a 4-point per passing touchdown league, if I'm expecting that touchdown rate to take a step back, he's just a guy that I'm at his current cost, I'm fading a little bit. Now, if he does fall in drafts, I think he's a fine target, but I think he's going a little bit too high right now, expecting that touchdown rate to continue. And so for me, he's a guy that unless the ADP drops a little bit, I'll probably be fading for the most part.
There you go. 11 games with 2 or more touchdowns. Started this season with back-to-back 3 passing touchdown games, and then ended the season with 4 straight 2 or more touchdown games. So just, I mean, the back end of the season, Jordan Love really increased his value in
Played
fantasy
really well.
circles. Yeah, he did. Got him to the playoffs. Was a big part of the reason that they did make the playoffs. Gentlemen, before we hop into the running backs, anything else you want to touch on these QBs? Speak now.
So I'll say this: if you want, I know that me and Jorge both, we've got Jaden Daniels up there a little bit. Me specifically, I mean, I've got him. I'm the only one that has him as a quarterback 1. I'll just say if you want the full reasoning for Jaden Daniels, we did a rankings discrepancies episode. Actually, the last time Jorge was with us, we went through each position, looked at where we were different on our rankings, and Jaden Daniels was a hot topic. So if you want a full discussion on that, go check out that episode. But what I'll tell you is once you get into the round 10 territory where Jaden Daniels is going, and you're in that streaming quarterback territory, one of the things that I look for is what does their schedule look like? And so just to highlight that for Jaden Daniels, I think that's one of the reasons why I like, if I do miss out on the quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson or Kyler that I'm talking about, and I want to wait until a little bit later, he gets to start off the year against Tampa, the Giants, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Arizona Cardinals, who were pretty good pretty good matchups for fantasy quarterbacks last year. And now, teams obviously make changes. They're not playing the same defenses they played last year. But if you go off the information we have, based on the quarterbacks that are going a little bit later, you could do much worse than Jaden Daniels' early season schedule. And so, he's a guy to where you can draft him in round 10, and you're going to have a pretty good idea early on if he's going to be a guy for you or not in terms of fantasy production. And if early on in the year it looks like he's just not going to cut it, then you can cut him and move on. Because, I mean, that's what you're at that point, round 10 and later, whenever you draft Jaden Daniels, that's what you're doing anyway. Is you're at the streaming quarterback point to where you're hoping that you hit on a guy that can be a long-term answer, but you're not expecting it necessarily. And so that was one point that whenever we discussed Jaden Daniels on the ranking discrepancy show that I don't think we discussed. And so I just wanted to point that out, that's just kind of a broader point, not even just Jaden Daniels, but once you get past I would say, honestly, once you get past quarterback 9, which is where I have Dak, you guys have Burrow. But once you get past that last set of elite pocket passing quarterbacks, look at the quarterback schedules and see which one you think has the best chance to get off to a hot start. Because once you get past Burrow and Dak and Stroud and the rushing, obvious high upside rushing quarterbacks that are going earlier, you're hoping to hit on somebody that can be a long-term answer for you. So take a look at their schedules. It's tough to project, but do your best to see who you think has the best chance to get off to a hot start and go from there. That's the way that I approach quarterbacks once you get past the elite options.
Let me somewhat piggyback off of that and saying, as much as we get excited about, the Richardsons and the Prescotts and the Strouds and the, insert every single quarterback we've been talking to up until this point, there's something a little bit like soothing knowing that you missed out on these guys in like rounds 4, 5, and 6. And now you can wait for an upside like Jaden Daniels and pair him with, a Stafford or,
Jared Goff.
You know what I mean? Like there's something where it's like, okay, I can take a gamble and then double tap back-to-back picks or skip around and get my other quarterback. And it's like, I feel pretty comfortable here, versus like you're taking a gamble on one of these upside quarterbacks and then you're missing out on a skill position player that could potentially help you down the stretch. Going back to that episode, which you can find on podcast form as well as over on our YouTube channel under the Fourth and Frames banner. I was a little bit shaky on Joe Burrow. I think I was probably the lowest on Joe Burrow we had because we just hadn't seen a lot of things. There were a lot of unknowns. We hadn't seen him practice yet. I still don't think we've seen him practice yet, but we did see something that was pretty good for fantasy purposes for redraft this year, which was T. Higgins signing his 1-year tender. That at least it gives you some confidence that there is stability there in that passing game. And regardless of them bringing in Mike Gesicki, no disrespect to Mike Gesicki, but it's the Higgins and Chase
show. Yeah,
show. Thank you. So I'm very. That's what had me move Burrow into the back end of my tier 2 at quarterback 10.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's how typically I don't draft more than one quarterback in a one quarterback league, but that last year was an exception to that. And like I love Anthony Richardson, right? That's been pretty clear. I was taking a lot of shots on him late in drafts last year, and what I was doing was I was pairing him with Geno Smith, who I was higher on that was going late in drafts. And now the Geno thing didn't really play out last year, but Anthony Richardson, he was delivering for me until he got out for the rest of the year, right? And so I think you can take the same approach with Jaden Daniels, where you can take Jaden Daniels in round 10, turn around and take a guy like Jared Goff or somebody like that. And then if Jaden Daniels doesn't work out, you have somebody that you can pivot to. So if you take a quarterback late, I don't mind you taking another shot. But that's another thing I'll say is if you take a Dak, a Burrow, a Stroud, guys like that, and you're on a one quarterback league, don't draft any more quarterbacks. Don't waste a bench spot on a quarterback. Take a flyer on a running back or receiver that might be able to gain some value at the end of your drafts. Don't draft Goff or Caleb Williams or Jordan Love or somebody at the end of your draft if you already have one of those top quarterbacks. And so that's just one thing I wanted to say. But to Jorge's point, if you're taking a later upside guy like Jaden Daniels, I don't hate putting a safer option like Goff in your pocket just in case it doesn't work out, because those guys might not be available on waivers. So I don't hate that at all.
I agree. Before we pivot to running backs, Drew, you and I quickly were the only two that didn't have Tua Tagovailoa in their top 16. If I pulled the data correct here, for me it was the fact that he's in one of the most prolific offenses with some of the best weapons in the NFL. Had his highest yardage total last year, but still failed to get to that 30 touchdown mark in the regular season. And his rushing totals are pretty much non-existent. So that's the Tua fade for me. Is that pretty much the same thing for you?
Shout out to at Chuck F. Bass, Chuck Bass on Twitter. Quarterbacks being drafted in the top 20 that averaged less than 17 points per game last year without injury. Tua in the list.
Tua Tagovailoa.
Only guy that finished out in that had less than 17 points per game last year without injury that was inside the top 20. So I think he's propped up because of
4,600 passing yards. 4,600 passing yards.
And he's very similar to what we talked about with Goff. He's a guy to where once the weather gets ugly, once he's having to play outdoors, you don't want nothing to do with him.
No.
Tua is just a guy that, with not having the rushing upside, he's a guy I want nothing to do with in one quarterback leagues. In super flex leagues, as your quarterback too, he's a fine option. But in one quarterback leagues, he's a guy I just don't want anything to do with.
All right, let's pop over to the running backs. I don't have it. We don't have the running back graphic.
That's all right. We can talk about it anyway.
Yeah, let's roll. Let's get the graphic. Let's get the rankings. They're in the sheet here.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. You just want to go like one by one, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, I got Christian McCaffrey at 1. You guys got Christian McCaffrey at 1?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Yeah, he's running back 1. He's the 101 in your one quarterback leagues. I think that I know that receivers are all the rage, and I get CD, Tyreek, whoever your wide receiver 1 is. But if I'm at the 101, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey. But honestly, I don't want the 101 this year. Because even though I think that Christian McCaffrey is the 101, I think he is the running back 1. I think that the gap between Christian McCaffrey and the running back 2 is going to be smaller this year than it was last year. Just for me personally, the next set of running backs I have, my tier 2 of running backs. So CMC, he's in a tier by himself. But my next tier of running backs is Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall. And so with Bijan in an improved offense with an actual NFL quarterback, with an actual coaching staff that an actual offensive play calling coaching staff.
Yeah.
And a coaching staff that is talking about wanting to use him as a bell cow. And then Breece Hall being another year removed from injury with Aaron Rodgers back in the Jets offense. I think that those two guys are going to be productive enough. And I think that they're going to be workhorse running backs similar to Christian McCaffrey, that even though I have CMC projected as the running back 1, I think it was like in total point, it wasn't not in fantasy points per game, but in like total fantasy points scored. I think CMC outpaced Raheem Mostert by like 80 or 90 points, and so I don't expect the gap between CMC and the running back 2 to be that big. And so like I don't want to have to don't want to have to make that. I would rather be able to be at like the 107 or 108 and take Bijan or Brees Hall instead, because I think the gap's going to be a little bit smaller. So I think CMC, he's still the running back one. He's in a tier by himself for me, but I think Bijan and Brees, I don't think they're far behind, and I would rather be able to pick a little bit later and take one of those guys personally.
All right. Yeah. I mean, Jorge and myself have Brees Hall as 2, which I think is fair. Drew, you got Bijan Robinson at 2, Brees Hall at 3. We both, Jorge and myself, Bijan Robinson at 3. Jorge's got Jonathan Taylor at 4. Drew's got Jonathan Taylor at 4. I have Saquon Barkley at 5. We talked about Anthony Richardson a little earlier, and I wanted to talk to you guys about Jonathan Taylor and kind of the opposite of what we thought about Anthony Richardson. Does Anthony Richardson's production as a rushing quarterback and the opportunity of him being able to vulture touchdowns, just like Saquon Barkley, are you guys nervous about that as well?
I feel Drew is going to overload StreamYard by clicking every single overlay that we have on this.
I was trying to get it fixed. I was trying to take the quarterback overlay off there. Chris, do your thing, man. Get it fixed. Get us back to the opener. Get the quarterbacks off the screen so the folks know we're not talking about quarterbacks anymore.
This is 4th and frame.
There we go.
Good, folks.
Boom.
There we go. Ooh, love it. I'm sorry. What was your question, Chris?
Does Anthony Richardson make you guys nervous for Jonathan Taylor, like Jonathan Taylor makes you nervous for Anthony Richardson?
No, they've made an investment in both players. One with draft capital with Anthony Richardson. He is your future, your franchise. You are not exposing him to the hits that he was taking last year. You paid Jonathan Taylor to take those hits, so therefore I'm okay with where Jonathan Taylor is going in rankings.
Oh, we're so back with the rankings. We're so back.
Oh my God, I love it.
Back. Almost back.
We're so almost back. Yeah, no. So right. I mean that's really that's what keeps Jonathan Taylor out of that Bijan and Brees tier for me, is the concern that him and Anthony Richardson might kind of cancel each other out from time to time. So I have him as my running back 4, but I do think that there's some concern there that, you know, they're gonna steal touchdowns from each other, and I think that, you know, he has to be a little bit lower. So there is a little bit concern for me, but I mean, when healthy, Jonathan Taylor has shown us that he's one of the best running backs in the league, and so, you know, just as far as his pure skill, I don't have any concern about that. It's just how do the rushing touchdowns end up getting distributed is the only concern that I really have. But so that's kind of why I have. You know, I mentioned I have CMC in a tier by himself. I have Bijan Robinson, Brees Hall in the next tier. And then my next tier is Jonathan Taylor and Jahmyr Gibbs. And Jahmyr Gibbs, I have similar concerns with, you know, David Montgomery. I expect Jahmyr Gibbs to be the lead running back. I mean, even in the red zone, things like that down the stretch, he took over. Like he was outpacing David Montgomery comfortably. But I also don't think David Montgomery is just going to go away either. And so that's, you know, while Anthony Richardson is my reason for concern with Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery is my concern with Jahmyr Gibbs, where I think that I think they're elite running backs, but I think they're a step down from Bijan and Brees Hall personally. But I think that they're a step above the next set of running backs, which for me is, you know, Saquon, Travis Etienne, those guys. So I think for me, I have a very clear top 5, and then I think there's a cutoff after that.
Yeah, you know, and especially you mentioned that in a PPR format versus like a half or a non-PPR format. My PPR, I'm with you. Christian McCaffrey, Brees Hall, Bijan, they should be in a tier all by themselves with Jonathan Taylor. I actually have Derrick Henry up in that tier with Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley, just because they just feel very similar in terms of what they bring to the table and what they potentially could not bring to the table. I know, and I don't like doing it. I don't like introducing the bias of injury, and I get exactly what you're coming from. Everyone should go into every season thinking that these players are going to be at their absolute best.
Sure.
They were hoping for. I get it, but man, when it happens a lot, you know, it's kind of hard to ignore. It's hard to ignore, and I know we should, but it's hard to ignore, which is why you have the injury history with Saquon. You have you know, the uncertainty with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson feeding off each other. Then Derrick Henry, you know, again, you have that little, you know, blip of injury history with him too, and how much more he can take. But then it's funny how I look at all our rankings, then all of a sudden we get to the pass catchers, and it's like, okay, well, they're starting to creep up into like the middle of our top 10, top 12, because now we're taking scoring format into consideration. And I guess, if you don't mind, I guess I was kind of curious with Chris, at what point do you take, when you're taking your top, 20 or 24 or whatever it is, at what point do you deviate from thinking about playmaker potential to scoring format potential? Like, where do you start drawing that line as far as like where you emphasize where you're ranking based off of format versus what they've shown in terms of what they can do?
I think right around that like 14 and down spot, when I'm kind of constructing the rankings, I might deviate. I might rank a guy above another guy based on big play potential and boom weeks. How many boom weeks can this guy give me per year? If you're a 0 RB drafter, that's kind of the production you want to chase, right? So I kind of want to get those guys in the middle of the draft. We know who the studs are going to be at the top, top 10, top 12 guys. These guys are involved in the pass catching roles. They're high volume guys, guys that I can see score a significant amount of touchdowns. Then as I get into like Joe Mixon, volume guy for me. It's just going to be a volume guy in Houston. So I got no problem putting him ahead of a guy like Devin Achane that I can see just being a big play. Big play running back. Well, Raheem Mostert's still there, right? And I try to approach these eliminating dynasty from my brain and strictly tunnel vision on that's just hard. 2024, right? And where I think these guys are going to finish and where we should be drafting them for 2024. And Devon Achane with Jalen right there, with Raheem Mostert there. There's other guys in that backfield. I could see a situation where Devon Achane, if there's no injuries in that backfield, which most likely there's going to be because the guy ahead of him
Raheem Mostert has never been healthy, other than last year.
Exactly. So that's like that. I could see that happening, but like we said, we don't like to project. I'm not going to project those situations in my rankings. So I'm gonna put the big play guys a little lower than the volume guys. So it's right around that 14 and lower mark for me.
So is David Montgomery the reason why you have Jahmyr Gibbs down at 9, as opposed to, me and Jorge both have him in our top 5. You still have him in your top 10, but he's down at running back 9. Is it because of David Montgomery, or are there other factors?
That's exactly it. I can see a situation where David Montgomery steals playing snaps. So it's hard for me to put a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, who I'm projecting to have a decent amount of snaps and target share and rushing totals. But it's hard for me to put him ahead of a guy like Travis Etienne, who I'm not buying into the Tank Bigsby stuff. I'm still projecting Travis Etienne to have a solid season. Kyron Williams, the same. As much as we like to talk about it, as much as the Los Angeles Rams like to talk about Blake Corum, if Kyron Williams is healthy and he can continue on the pace that he was on last season, Kyron Williams can absolutely smash running back 8. I might have him at his ceiling right now. That might be the ceiling for Kyron Williams, but I'm not scare nobody to put these guys above certain players that
I don't think you do, though, because in points per game last year he was the running back 3. So I don't think running back 8 is his ceiling by any means.
Exactly.
I am a little bit nervous about the addition of Blake Corum, just because they feel like very similar players, except Blake Corum was just a better prospect. But Howard Williams has gotten it done at the NFL level, though. And so, it's like Blake Corum might be the better prospect coming out of college at the time, but Howard Williams has already showed us on an NFL field that he can get it done. But I've got Joe Mixon at running back 12. I agree with Colby, and Joe Mixon's never really been my favorite running back by any means, but he went from one high-powered offense in Cincinnati where he was the guy, and he just, he continued to get it done, to another one here in Houston where I think he's going to get it done as well. Dameon Pierce, I caught a lot of flack for calling Dameon Pierce a bust last year. And that
did.
that worked out okay. And so concerning I was a Dameon Pierce bust guy last year, I'm not concerned about Dameon Pierce eating into Joe Mixon's workload this year after they went and traded for him and gave him a contract. I think that Mixon's going to be the main guy in that offense, and it's going to be one of the better offenses in the league. He should have a, we talk about all the time that we don't like projecting touchdowns, but I mean, how many guys are going to be ahead of him in terms of the touchdown opportunities they're going to get? I mean, they're going to be in the red zone plenty this year, and so he feels like a good bet to have double-digit touchdowns. And while he might be like fourth, fifth in the pecking order in terms of targets, he's going to have the rushing attempts are going to be there. The touchdown upside is there. So yeah, like I like taking Joe Mixon where he's going. I think he's a great value in drafts right now. He's like in the Scott Fishbowl mocks we've been doing right now. I've ended up with a ton of Joe Mixon in those mocks because I like where he's going in drafts. I
am shocked at the disrespect of fullback of Dare Ogunbowale and thinking that he's not going to eat it for Joe Mixon's goal line work. I'm just messing. That's messing.
Dare Mike Jones Ogunbowale. Who?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like when I constructed these, I got my top tier guys 1 to 6. And then I got guys I feel like are kind of the same type of player between Travis Etienne, Kyron Williams, and Gibbs. I got Josh Jacobs at 10. I'm a Josh Jacobs guy only because got to keep Dare healthy for field goals and extra points. Absolutely. I think Josh Jacobs in Green Bay, at least this year, is going to be ridden until his wheels fall off. Then I got my high volume guys. Rashad White, Isaiah Pacheco, James Conner, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, all guys that I feel can flip-flop in the year in 2024. These guys I feel like are all kind of the same mold of player, all going to kind of running the same. Then I got my breakout guys, Kenneth Walker, James Cook, Devon Achane, and then the old faithfuls, Brian Robinson, Kamara Pollard, Montgomery, and then the rookie Jonathan Brooks. What about for you, Jorge? Where do you start drawing that line?
So for me, it's when I get to the 20s, I started looking at opportunity, and I like looking into, I know this sounds kind of corny. I like looking into coaching and scheme and just seeing what actually fits into where, is it a square peg in a round hole or vice versa, or does stuff make sense? And so when looking at your ranking of Brian Robinson at 20, I have him at 24, and I'm kind of pissed at myself I don't have him higher because I love, and I'll be preaching this all year, the addition of Anthony Lynn as the running backs coach for the Washington Commanders, who had such good success coaching up LaShawn McCoy in Buffalo, Eckler Gordon in San Diego / Los Angeles. Delivering that 1-2 punch, especially with the Chargers. Now that you have a 1-2 punch with one of the same running backs here, but they're going to be emphasizing Brian Robinson more just because of the youth there. I am a huge fan of really going into scheme and talent and coaching once we get into the 20s. Then as we get further into the RB3 range, then we get, and then below, that's where scoring format really just jumps to me as far as who's getting receptions, who's getting the targets, who has the target potential. I shouldn't say receptions, but who's getting the target potential, who has the upside, which quarterbacks are passing, have a higher ratio of pass to run. Things like that. That's where that comes into play for me, as far as taking the playability, the big playability, and separating that out from scoring format.
Yep. I think you guys got to put a little bit of respect on James Conner's name. I think for redraft, you guys might have him a little too low. Is that because of Kyler Murray and the rookie Trey Benson that you guys kind of have him where you do?
Yep, that's 100% what it is. Trey Benson is on a list of 2 running backs long. There's 2 rookie running backs that I believe in out of this class, and it's Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson. And I do think that there's a possibility where down the stretch Trey Benson ends up taking the job, and it's not anything that I think is a guarantee. But I think that there is a possibility where that happens. And then Kyler being healthy, the rushing opportunities that he's going to have, I think that plays into it as well. So there's other guys that I would prefer to take shots on in that range. And so I think I'm probably lower than consensus on James Conner. But yeah, it's 100% Kyler being back and Trey Benson. I think he's going to have an effect on that backfield.
Yeah, for me, I have him at 17, 15 around that range.
Yeah,
I don't. I'm not concerned with Kyler Murray. I think I look at James Conner and I imagine I'm looking at him with beard goggles at the bar at 2:00 in the morning, getting ready to leave. And I am amazed when I wake up the next morning and I take the beer goggles off, and he's a 10. And then when the beer goggles are on, he's a 10. But then something happens in the middle of the night where it turns into a 1. And what that means is he starts off great, gets injured, misses his requisite 5 or 6 games a year, comes back, finishes strong. And then each and every year we get into redraft season. It's like, why are we putting not enough respect on James Conner's name? Because he started strong, finished strong, but we're not doing a good enough job of taking into account the fact that this guy just can't stay on the field. Drew, you mentioned it. Benson, when does he get his time? Weeks 4 through 8. That's what's happening this year. I'm telling you right now, Nostradamus, weeks 4 through 8. That's where he gets his time. But if we're playing it like we should, and not taking it from like wishing. First of all, we're not wishing injury, but we shouldn't be predicting injuries. We shouldn't be predicting injuries either. It's all right there for James Conner. It's all right there for him to really take that RB1 leap here with this offense.
Yeah, that is where my concern comes in. Is in years past, the running backs they've had behind James Conner, to where whether it's him missing time due to injury, whatever the case may be, the running backs behind James Conner have not been talented enough to hold him off the field if he does miss time. Whereas if he does end up missing time at some point in 2024, I think there's a world where Trey Benson gets the opportunity and never lets go of the job. I mean, he's worlds more talented than the guys that they've had behind James Conner the last 2 years. And so I just that is where my concern is if Trey Benson just gets a little bit of light, just that little bit of room to be able to really make an impact on the offense, and then they see how explosive he is, the big playability that he has. I think there's a world where he gets the reins and he never lets go. And so I have a hard time investing heavy draft capital in James Conner, factoring that in.
Yeah. And considering his age, last season, he was actually on the incline instead of the decline. Highest rushing total numbers, 1,000 yards, 5 yards
a great
per
year.
attempt, which is his highest amount of yards after contact, highest amount of missed tackles forced, highest amount of runs over 10 yards. So, I mean, the guy just turned into a fine wine. Hey, turned into a fine Chianti on the field for Arizona. I think Trey Benson, at least early, cuts into his receiving total, something that wasn't really part of his game last year. Only 31 targets, 27 receptions, and 165 receiving yards. So the fact that he was able to do what he did without the rushing totals, I think they're going to ride James Conner this season and kind of ease Trey Benson. But like you said, and Jorge as well, if he does miss any time and Trey Benson shows that he's got the juice, it's lights out for James Conner.
Yeah, it feels like the Kyler, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, Trey Benson, that's the future of this offense. Like that's their core to me. It feels like it. So I think it's smart to ease Trey Benson along, but like if he does get on the field and he shows what he can do, and if he shows the same explosiveness that he showed at Florida State, like how do you take that off the field at that point? So that is my concern. I have that baked into my rankings, but I understand if somebody wants to take him earlier than that, because early in the season, I think he could be a guy that gets you off to a really hot start with how good the offense is going to be. Like I think to start the year, he's the clear RB1 at what's going to be one of the better offenses in the league. And so I think he could get you off to a really hot start.
Yeah, agreed. Before we end the show, fellas, give me one guy from 15 down in your rankings that you could see finish as not the running back one, but as a running back one in fantasy points per game when all is said and done.
Ooh, that's a good one. You said from 15 down?
Yeah, 15 down.
Jorge, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Yeah, it's easy for me. I'm going to put it out there. I think Najee. I just love Arthur Smith. I just love the fact that they're just going to run Rudolph. It's going to be him and Jalen Warren are going to be impressive. But give me Najee Harris this year.
All right, so I'll go, since we're doing points per game and not season total fantasy points, which I think is the correct way to approach the question. Give me Jonathan Brooks, man. I think once he takes over the job with the usage that Dave Canales gave to Rachaad White last year, Like, I don't think Chuba Hubbard or anybody else in that backfield has shown any reason for us to think that Jonathan Brooks can't hold them off with how good of a running back he was at Texas before he got injured. And so once he's able to work through those injury concerns and he's able to get on the field, I think that with the draft capital they invested in Jonathan Brooks, I think that that's his job for the taking once he's able to take it. And once he does get it, I don't think he's going to look back. And so if he gets the volume that that similar to what Rachaad White got in Tampa last year, I think there's a world where he could be a running back one in points per game down the stretch. And I think he's one of those guys that could be a league winner for you down the stretch of the season.
Yeah, I agree. And Aaron Jones was mine, Andrea. He's my pick to possibly finish as an RB1 at fantasy points per game, only because there's no one really behind them. The quarterback situation is a little
shaky.
shaky.
You disrespect Ty Chandler like that?
Mike Jones Chandler.
Oh, come on. You really are disrespecting the man.
Like, come on, man. Ty Chandler's okay. He's all right. I mean, he was never able to beat out Michael Carter or Javonte Williams at UNC, so I don't expect him to beat out Aaron Jones.
No, I don't think he'll
in
beat
Minnesota. They brought him in to be the guy. I'm expecting Aaron Jones to be the guy. Their quarterback situation is a little shaky with Sam Darnold and the rookie JJ McCarthy. Yeah. I guess we're all believing Sam Darnold to be the week one starter, even if he's not, and JJ McCarthy is the week one starter. I'm expecting a full workload for Aaron Jones, both out of the backfield and lining up as a wide receiver and catching the ball. So if there's one guy in fantasy points per game that I think that could finish up there without I could take the cheap one and say Devon Achane. I can go James Cook, but
yeah, I mean, Devon Achane should be outside of your top 12 anyway. So that's
yes,
a fair
he
point.
should in redraft. But
I like Aaron Jones. The player is incrediable, man. Like he's shown to be a great running back. The only concern I have is, he's another year older. He's creeping up on 30 years old now. And running backs seeing success at that point in their career, especially after changing teams. There's not a very long track record of running backs seeing success changing teams at that point in their careers. Mm-hmm. The offensive line situation in Minnesota is not great. The quarterback situation is not great, and so I'm concerned that the upside might not be there. But if the workload ends up being there, then who cares if it's Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy if they're gonna give him the ball 20, 25 times a game. But yeah, I have a hard time buying into running backs that are 28, 29, 30 years old and changing teams at that point in their career. But Aaron Jones, the player, has showed us how talented he is year over year whenever he can stay healthy. So if he stays healthy all year, I can absolutely see a world where he ends up being a top 12 running back.
Age is not a factor for this man, Drew. Last season, second half of the season, when you think the aging running back falters, this man put up 5 straight games of 100 or more yards. 20 plus carries in each of those games, plus the rushing profile.
If he was still in that same Green Bay offense, I'd have him higher than I do.
But we've seen these running backs in the Minnesota offense, especially pass-catching running backs, succeed. Dalvin Cook, Alexander Mattison had some games where people were ready to project this guy leading into the season when he was not us, of course, because
no, we weren't.
But there were some people ready to pick Alexander Mattison ahead of where he should have been picked last year because he was labeled as the running back one for Minnesota. Now, Aaron Jones,
the offense was also projected to be better because they had Kirk Cousins
at
quarterback.
Yep, that's fair enough. I'll give you that. But so Aaron Jones for me, I think, going to be the guy.
He's a hard. He's an impossible guy to root against.
He's a hard eval right now. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I'll give you that. Jorge, we appreciate you coming on the show. To everyone that watched, dropped a question, liked the stream, or subscribed to the channel, we greatly appreciate your support here at Fantasy and Frames. Stay tuned. Shoot the Gap is coming on right after us. Jorge, the frame is yours. Let the people know what you got going on inside of fantasy football and outside of fantasy football.
So for those who follow me on X or Twitter at Jorge B. Edwards, you all know I do a pro wrestling podcast with Keith Fleming. You can follow us at PW Squared Circle on all the social media platforms and on YouTube. As far as here at Fantasy and Frames, just getting the IDP content back up and running. We got little surprise Gary Davenport is now a member of the Fantasy and Frames family, and so he'll be putting out his first article with us here at Fantasy and Frames on Friday. Very excited about that. We have, all sorts of shows going on. We could just rattle through the list. You do. Go to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, so that when they all go on, you stop what you're doing. Literally just drop everything that you're doing, whether you're at the grocery store, holding a kid, you name it, just drop it and turn on YouTube and watch us and subscribe. Drop those kids, exactly. And have a good time. Gentlemen, as always, thank you so much for having me on. It has been a blast. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Just going. We really appreciate it.
Thank you again for coming on. Drew, what you got going on, brother?
So yeah, I want to make sure to shout out Howard Bender over at Fantasy Alarm and Sirius. So my Kyle Pitts Dynasty Buy article went live today, and he reached out and asked if I wanted to promote it and discuss it on Sirius tomorrow. So I'm going to be on Sirius at 6:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. So if you're not doing anything, you want to hang out with us and talk Kyle Pitts. 6:30 p.m. Yeah, drop the kids and turn on Sirius and check us out. So shout out to Howard, man. He continues to be one of the most kind people in the industry and lifting up smaller creators and giving us an opportunity and a platform to be able to talk ball with them. And so no different tomorrow. So I'll be on Sirius tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, to talk Kyle Pitts plus more. So if you're not doing anything tomorrow night, make sure to check us out.
Yeah, tell two friends to tell two friends, baby.
That's right.
That's the show. We appreciate each and every one of you. We miss you, Rhett. Hopefully, is that Travis Kelce? It is Travis Kelce. Hopefully, they gave you a nice ring for hanging up your jersey in the rafters, brother. We miss you. For Drew Scott at Drew3MR, for Rhett Manuel at R Manuel Sports, for Jorge Edwards at Jorge B. Edwards, I'm Chris Battisto. Doodles.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.